Gracie and I are at the coal mines today, and what we're doing is hunting for the blacksmith shops that were down here. Now, we're just behind the main settlement at the moment, and where Gracie is patiently laying down in the distance there is where I believe the approximate area of the forge was in the blacksmith's shop when they built the original barracks here. Now, I've got an area of about 9.2 by 5.3. The reason I know it's in this area here is that we have a drawing from 1842 showing the blacksmith shop in existence, and it came out just about where the end of this wall is here. To the exact point I'm not sure. There are large pieces of sandstone here, but whether they're from a blacksmith shop or just rolled down the hill I don't know. I've got my approximate length and distance as the 1842 diagram was fairly close to scale, so I've worked out what's known, which is the size of the barracks back there, and kind of worked out my measurements from here. This piece of sandstone matches up fairly close where I believe the border is, but again, that could have just been rolled down the hill. The forge I know was down this end, and there happens to be a mound here between me and Gracie. And I'll keep repeating myself, and again, this may be just big wishful thinking, or under there may be remains of the forge. So the doorway itself was on the far side between the two ropes there, and you've got to keep in mind that, say, all these depressions and pathways that are now present at the coal mines, a lot of them weren't here when the convicts were here. This road here was built I think in the 1830s, 1840s. The convict road was lower down there over the bank, and there were buildings here. You can just see some sandstone and that, but there were different collections of buildings here beside the blacksmith shop, working their way towards the penitentiary. Hardly any, if at all, remains are here. One day I might just do a mock-up of this area out of interest, just to show you what it did look like. Now, this wasn't the only blacksmith shop at the coal mines. So there's a couple of others. So what we're going to do is head up towards the main shaft via the inclined plane and have a look and have a talk about them. I'm now located on the inclined plane. I'm about 550 metres below the main shaft, and in that direction there is Plunket Point, probably another 200 metres. Now, that newspaper article that you read from the Mercury, dated around 1918, talked of a blacksmith shop being about 500 to 600 yards down from the main shaft. Now, this puts me in this approximate area here. Gracie and I have spent 2 hours a day for the past week up and down both sides of this area, from about 350 metres to 600 metres down from the main shaft, and we've seen nothing at all in the way of clinker, which is the slag that comes out of the forge, or nuts and bolts or anything else that was referred to in that article. What I'm suggesting though is this spot here, where it's fairly well levelled out in some places, may have been the location of that blacksmith shop, and where all this soil has come down from the hill, there may be evidence of it under there if they ever do an archaeological dig here. Now, I'm not seeing any bricks, any type of foundation, And all I've got here is one lonely piece of sandstone. But why I picked this spot, it's the junction between a tramway that came out from the back of that hill, the back of that tree there, the tramway that came down from the main shaft, and there's another tramway through there. So all this area here was like maybe a junction point for 1, 2, 3, 4 tramways, and they were used over different time by both the convicts and the miners that came after them, that were leased the land from the government. So of all the places I can find within this area that was described by the article that you just saw, part of the article, this to me fits the bill the best. If you have a look at my video 1838 to 1839 tramway, it'll give you an explanation of the tramway that does come down from behind the tree. It starts right up on the hill and ends up down here. So I'll put that forward as a suggestion, but as I said, I've found no evidence here whatsoever to show that the blacksmith shop was here. Now I'm now located up at the main shaft, which is referred to in that piece of reading. Those notes were written by a gentleman in the year 2000 of his recollections of visiting the coal mines in about 1919. So with that time span, some of his memory may have been a little bit out of place, but from the other part of the article I read, it all seems to make sense to me anyway. Now, what we're looking for here is a blacksmith's shop, and I have mentioned this briefly on the main shaft video. Where Gracie's laying now, not so patiently, is what I believe the forge that may have been connected to the blacksmith shop that was here. There's lots of depressions here where you can see there were buildings, but there are no actual brick foundations. So I'm suggesting that maybe the any fireplaces they had up here, or in particular the forge, were built with bricks, and the other buildings may have been timber slabs, as they weren't sure whether this was going to be permanent or not. We do know from eyewitness accounts that there was a blacksmith shop and workshop up here, and both of them would have been servicing the engine, steam engine that was located behind the main shaft. So with that engine being up here, things became a little bit more permanent, as none of the other sites where the convicts worked had workshops or blacksmith shops that we know of. Now, the reason why we're pretty well much onto a good thing about this being a blacksmith shop is this stuff here, clinker, which is slag from the forge. I like the word clinker because it may give you the impression that I actually know what I'm talking about when I'm doing these videos. So there's a fair bit of it around, and it's sprinkled all around the area here. This area gets a lot of traffic. It's the car park to the main shaft, and there's a pathway up there, but a lot of people use this area here to go back to their cars, and then the bits of material from what I think was the forge gets distributed all over this mound here. Now, I also have another possibility of a blacksmith shop being up in this location, which we'll go over and have a look at now. Now, this area I'm at the main shaft is located on the pathway as you come up from the car park at the main shaft. The main shaft and boiler is over in that direction there, and I have mentioned this structure in the main shaft video that I've done. Now I believed from an old survey that this was a store to hold explosives, as this was the first shaft that the convicts actually used explosives to help remove the rock as they were tunnelling down into the tunnels. Reason why it was suggested that it was a storage for explosives was it's been built with dolomite, which is quite a strong rock as opposed to the convict bricks, and it's just a little bit away from the rest of the area here. But Gracie and I gave this place a good clean up, and then I looked at this area here where Gracie's laying, and what I noticed was there's brickwork, and you can just see along here there's a line of bricks. Now there's a bit of broken brick there, but there's more bricks there, more bricks there, and the rock dolomite seems not to be present within this large opening here. So what I'm suggesting is that this was actually a fireplace, and I have had no experience in building structures that hold explosives, but I think the last thing I'd put in such a building would be a fireplace. So what I'm suggesting is that this may have been another blacksmith shop used later on after the convicts had left by the people that leased the mines from the government. Now if we have a look from this side here, from behind where what I believe a fireplace is, the structure itself would have been about 4 metres by 4 metres. And you can see the limestone there is quite heavily caked on in between the dolomite. Now if we have a look over here, we have a large coal slack, which is the bits and pieces of coal, the tiny bits that they can't use, and that gets built up over time, and that's everywhere through the coal mines, and this is just a very, very small dump. Now one can't dig at the coal mines, but due to the current infestation of rabbits, they do some digging for me. So we've dug up 2 holes here, and it's not from just these 2 holes, it's all around this mound that I'm standing on now. There are bits of metal of different sizes, and this pretty much fits the description of that first article describing the blacksmith shop that we couldn't find at the bottom of the hill. But also what I got here is my beloved crinkle, and there's bits and pieces of it here, which leads me to believe that there was a forge located here, and then this pile here was where they piled up the coal that they were using, the bigger pieces. Then over time these smaller pieces formed a mound, and now and then they gave the place a clean up, which caused the bits and pieces of metal to accumulate. You can see it all through here, here. None of this stuff I've touched, so it's everywhere, and I think if you dug into this mound you'd find a hell of a lot more. Now we have a whole lot of brick rubble here, and I have one piece of sandstone there, and there's a depression in the ground here. I haven't done my ropes on this because I believe it goes further under where that brick rubble is. What gets me about this brick rubble here, and I know just about every video I do has brick rubble in it, but there is not one complete piece of brick here. They're all broken. I can only guess at the reasons why. Obviously if the brick thieves came, they took it, they'd take the complete ones, but in every other location there are whole bricks located. Even if there's a few, there are bricks that are complete. So maybe this was taken from the brick kiln down the end, a couple of kilometres as the crow flies. Maybe the broken bricks were brought up here and used as some type of platform or something for a workshop out behind the what I'm suggesting is a forge, blacksmith shop. As I said before, there's no foundations, brick foundations up here that I've seen at all, and it's the same here. I can't see one single foundation, but again I suggest that these huts here weren't as permanent as the other places down at the settlement and that, and what they may have been using was something like this, timber around the outsides of the building, and obviously had the rock work around where the forge was, where the heat was. Well, you probably didn't want timber if you could get away with it, and maybe this end here was some type of workshop, something connected with the forge that they could work in with a timber surrounding that kept them dry during the wetter months. Now, the article that we saw before the last one, the gentleman's notes, he said just below the main shaft where the coal carts come out. Now, the coal carts come out straight ahead there, so technically we are beside the area where the coal carts come out, not below. But if I walk straight across there now, I'll come out to where the screen was, where they loaded the coal carts to go down the inclined plane. So I'll put this forward as the third known blacksmith shop at the coal mines. That fourth one, Gracie and I are going to do a lot more exploring and see if we can find bits of metal like we found up here, bits of crinkle, and see if we can establish that location. But I've got a feeling that it could be wishful thinking. Anyway, there you have it, the blacksmith shops at the coal mines. Gracie and I are behind the channel which comes down from the engine mount, if you see my engine mount video, and we've been exploring the area, seeing where that channel goes and other bits and pieces around here. And then we come across here on the ground a single piece of clinker. And there's no metal round here, no bits and pieces like I saw up at the main shaft. There is a flattened area I'm standing on, but there's no brick foundations or anything else. But it just gives another piece in a very big jigsaw puzzle to try to work out where it fits.